Hi guys, today I want to talk to you about how I often talk about my Hernandez series, but the thing is, if somebody were to start reading the series today from the beginning, because they might be confused because I'm always talking about Jorge Hernandez, and he's a very charismatic character. He's a very strong protagonist. People really like him. But if you started to hear all this stuff about him and then you were to actually start the series, the very first book, you might be a little surprised to find out he's not in the series yet. He is in the series, just not that book. He comes along in the second book in the series because it was never meant to be a series, and it kind of works out. I'll explain why in a minute. First of all, this is the first book in this Hernandez series, We're All Animals. This is Chase Jacobs. Chase Jacobs, it starts when he's just like this naive kind of guy who, he just got dumped by his high school sweetheart. They're very young, and he ends up getting a girl pregnant that he doesn't want to be with, and she kind of forces his hand to get married, as does his mother, and it just spirals out of control very fast. He's not happy with his life. This is not what he wanted. He didn't know what he wanted, but he did not want this, at least not at 18. He was very young. And I just kind of follow his journey and then how he eventually meets some sort of more sinister people, gets involved, how it happens, why it happens, and you kind of see how things fall into place, that he eventually gets involved with this sort of crime family, for lack of a better word. So, of course, Jorge Hernandez, if you don't know about the series, please look it up on my website, mimaandfire.com. I give a brief sort of overview of the books. And Jorge Hernandez himself is like this cartel boss. He leaves Mexico. He comes to Canada. He's lucky to be alive or not in prison, because that's where most cartel bosses end up, maybe. And so he comes here. He has a legit business, but he doesn't always have very legit business practices. He plays old school rules in a new country. But anyways, he doesn't come along till the second book, which is Always Be a Wolf. And in that book, he kind of comes along later on. And Chase continues to be the protagonist in that book. And it's him meeting Jorge Hernandez and his view, which is nice, because then you kind of see how the story eases along, how he gets involved with these people and how it changes him. But also you see his point of view regarding Jorge Hernandez when he meets him, how he sees him. He sees him as powerful, likable, but, he sees that he's a dangerous man. So it's kind of neat. So you see that point of view. Then in the next book, The Devil's Smooth Like Honey, that's when Jorge Hernandez takes over as the protagonist. And so you really see things turn around, because it's completely his point of view at that point in time. So, and his point of view also of Chase, which is kind of neat. I love having characters kind of switch things around. Sometimes even I'll have a chapter just dedicated to one character's point of view, and you get to see how they see everyone around them, which gives you, as a reader, also another point of view. Because if you're just reading about one protagonist, it doesn't matter. You're kind of in their corner because you're only hearing their sides. Like if you have two friends fighting and you only hear one of their sides, you kind of jump on that side because you're thinking, oh yeah, I see your point of view. I see where you're coming from, but you haven't heard the other side. And if you heard the other side, you might be like, oh, I don't know. You kind of get mixed up in the middle, which is so easy to do. And that's a whole other topic for another day. Anyways, maybe not a topic we'll talk about. We're not into that. Not going to help you with your problems. But so if you were to pick up this first book and you're like, I've heard all about this Jorge Hernandez character, he sounds pretty wild, or maybe you read one of the other books further along the series and you think, oh, I want to start from the beginning. He's not actually in this book, but he comes along very fast and furious and he takes right over. So, it's kind of nice. It eases you in before you get into all the brutal murders and such. This one's kind of a little calmer, little violence in it, but not anything too severe. I think you'll be able to handle it. And this guy's very relatable, Chase Jacobs, especially if you're a small town person. You get where he's coming from. And he's half indigenous, which is nice too. He he represents that sort of naive part of us all, whereas George Hernandez, maybe not so much. But anyways, the best thing to do if you're not sure about any of the books, if you haven't checked out any of the books, if this is the first time you ever seen me, I have over 200 videos. Go to my website, or even better yet, go to Amazon. Check out any of my books. Read the first chapter online. I always tell people that I'm not just out to make a quick sale. I want you to go on, check out the book, see what you think of it. I'm not trying to get people to buy the book just because. I want them to buy it because they want to buy it and because they want to read it. Eventually, you don't have to read it tomorrow. I have a stack of books here piled up in the corner. I mean, and a few corners. Sometimes it takes a while to get to them, right? That's totally fine, as long as your heart's into it. Anyways, once again, George Hernandez, he does show up eventually, and he takes right over, but you will not find him in this book. We're all animals. I didn't know he existed even then, which is kind of good. We're all a little surprised. Anyways, guys, check out more of my videos if this one appeals to you. I have some where I talk about the Hernandez series, like a whole series of them. And then I have others where I talk about writing. So if you want to get into writing, you have writing questions, things people have mainly asked me, some things people haven't asked me, maybe don't care. I talk about it anyway because, that's what I do. Anyways, guys, thank you. Have a great day.